Alright, so here's the dilemma I'm facing currently, and I'm sure many other up-and-coming content creators have faced this dilemma at one point or another when they first started making videos. You thought long and hard about what the first official video you want to make, put time and effort into, and release is going to be like, right? So you release it and you're happy with the product, that's fine and all, but where do you go from there? I started to think long and hard about this after I put up my first quote-unquote official video on my channel expressing concerns about a potentially botched remaster. And don't worry, I'll be sure to give this thing a stern talking to when I get there. But I was still drawing blanks about what I would talk about afterwards. I could talk about Halo, seeing as how I started to binge through all of the mainline Halo titles recently, and I'm confident my opinions on the series won't make anyone irrationally angry at all. Though I decided to postpone that inevitable video until later because I still have Halo 5 to play through, Halo Infinite when that game arrives, and the Halo Wars games, I guess? I don't know what these are. But it did get me thinking about retrospectives in general. I have a lot of retrospectives I aim to get to sometime in the future. But one of the biggest catalogs of game retrospectives I have tucked away in storage are for none other than Sonic the Hedgehog.
I can't figure you out. One second you're contemplating genocide, and the next you're saving one of your worst enemies!
I think it's no secret that I'm a huge fan of Sonic and constantly keep up with everything he's put out over the years, but for this particular retrospective I wanted to start out with something not mainline, a bit on the small side, though whether you consider these titles to be small or not is up for debate. That's right, today I'm going to look back at the Sumo Digital Sonic Racing trilogy.
I have arranged for you to meet.
Alright, sure, the series is not technically specifically Sonic-oriented, somewhat, but hey, it has Sonic in it, and it has a lot of his franchise represented, so it counts by me. Plus, in all honesty, I've been wanting to compile my thoughts on these games into a cohesive video for a long while now. Sonic has other racing games besides these, of course. I've been meaning to take another look at the Sonic Riders series for a while, and I do mean the whole series. There's, Sonic R, the Sonic Drift games. Man, for a fast character, he shared a hard time making an actually good racing game at the start of his career, huh? The whole SEGA All Stars deal technically started all the way back in 2004 as SEGA Superstars, released on the PlayStation 2. The game was developed by none other than Sonic Team themselves, and the game was controlled using the iToy. Yeah, remember that deal? The iToy? And how insanely popular it was? Smash hit with families all over the world? No? Yeah, figures. It was basically a minigame collection where you used the camera to partake in various activities, all of which included a variety of SEGA franchises, of course. Later on down the line, instead of Sonic Team, Sumo Digital would be tasked to create a crossover tennis game with a bunch of SEGA franchises. SEGA Superstars Tennis. I do own this game for the record, but I haven't played it yet, so I can't really give you my thoughts on it, but from what I could gather, the reception to it appears to be decent, so I'll leave it at that. It seemed to have done well anyway, because not too long after, Sumo was tasked again to create another game with all these various SEGA franchises in mind, but this time they were asked to turn it into a kart racer. Thus, in 2010, Sumo Digital gifted us Sonic and SEGA All Stars Racing.
Sonic and SEGA All Stars Racing!
Hey, I just said that. In hindsight, it made all the sense in the world for Sumo Digital to turn this series into a kart racer, considering their previous work on titles like Outrun. Good to stick to what you know best. I remember playing this game on the Wii a ton as a kid back in 2010. I still own a copy of the game today, as a matter of fact, though the footage you'll see will be recorded from the PC version, and this sure is an interesting PC port. Not even any achievements on Steam, that was surprising. Even Bad Rats has Steam achievements. Guess we know which game is on top, huh? Of course, the console versions get specific characters that the PC version doesn't. Xbox has Banjo-Kazooie, but in their, in my opinion, rather unpleasant-looking nuts and bolts reincarnation, and avatars. The Wii has the Miis, of course, and was apparently going to include Mario early on in development, but Sega turned down the idea as to not cross-contaminate the ongoing Mario and Sonic at the Olympics series. That really doesn't make any sense to me, but whatever, at least they had the Miis, I guess. Now Sony, on the other hand, they didn't get anything on this deal, they got flat out jibbed. Bit of a sidetrack, but I feel that this is interesting enough to warrant bringing up. Fans instantly noticed Knight's absence as a playable racer among the showcased roster and demanded for their inclusion in the game. And apparently this commotion is what prompted Sumo Digital to actually add Knights into the game. But not as a racer. See, the game was already so far in development, so Sumo understandably really couldn't add them in as a racer, so instead, they made Knights as the flag bearer in a nice little cameo. That's pretty neat. Anyway, getting into the actual game itself, it's the standard kart racing affair. You have multiple playable characters, drifting, items at your disposal, wacky track shenanigans. Everything you'd expect in a mascot kart racer is here and accounted for. You get a good variety of SEGA franchises mixed in. Sonic, of course, alongside Super Monkey Ball, Space Channel 5, Jet Set Radio, Alex Kidd, Billy Hatcher, Samba de Amigo, House of the Dead, Choo Choo Rocket, and Fantasy Zone, among other franchises. Even lesser-known SEGA characters like the Bonanza Brothers are in this game, all represented by either racers or racetracks. Yeah, a quick disclaimer for what I said earlier. House of the Dead was apparently banned in Germany at the time, amongst a huge assortment of other titles. God dang, Germany. So they couldn't include the actual name of the franchise, they just had to put Curian Mansion as the series label. Even when viewing the racer's profile, they had to abbreviate the series' title name. Oh man, my favorite franchise. HODTD. I did have some fond memories of playing the first All Stars Racing game as a kid, and I am pleased to report that upon replaying the first title years later, I found Sonic and SEGA All Stars Racing to be extremely... Yeah, I don't like this game much anymore, sorry. But you know what? It's not entirely the game's fault here. It's very clear that Sumo Digital basically used this game as a means to test the waters, if you will, to experiment and see what aspects work, what didn't, and improve upon them with later sequels, which they absolutely did. But I'll talk more about those games later on. Things like this tend to happen a lot, and that's not really a bad thing, it's just hindsight. And what's here isn't bad at all, actually, so for their first attempt, I'd say they did a pretty bang-up job. With that being said, this game still absolutely drained me when I recently played it, so I feel a civic duty to tear into it like wrapping paper on Christmas Day. I said before it feels like a standard kart racing affair, but I need to emphasize the standard part of that last sentence because it really doesn't have that much going for it. With All Stars Racing, the best way I could describe it is that it feels like a less polished Mario Kart without the super wacky, frustrating items. Basic, not very interesting, but overall well crafted enough to where you can look at it on that surface level and go, yeah, this isn't awful, I guess. You know, I don't really like Mario Kart at all, but at the very least there's this sense of polish and weight that the cars have, and the tracks can be very interesting layout-wise, especially in the later games. But that isn't really the case at all in All Stars Racing. All of the vehicles you control here feel extremely floaty, like there's not really a big sense of weight across most of the vehicles, so the general driving around already feels fairly unsatisfying. There are three types of vehicles characters can have. There's the standard car, basically the all-around vehicle, though some cars vary in size and handling. The hovercraft, the cars that hover slightly above the ground and get much more airtime while in the air with how floaty they are at the cost of much sloppier handling. Yeah, I really don't like this vehicle type. These in particular further emphasize the floaty nature of the controls. And bikes, which are, honestly just better cars in this game. There's not really any downsides to them. They apparently get bullied by other vehicle types, but I genuinely don't see it, especially since 99% of the time you're going to be far ahead of the competition with bikes. Side note, but apparently during development they were going to have Sonic race on foot while other characters raced on vehicles with various designs and forms, but they scrapped this as it didn't really make sense visually, especially when the racers on foot started drifting. I mean, I think it makes sense with Sonic, but that's a discussion for another day. Just an interesting tidbit I thought I'd bring up. I see a lot of people praise or point out every character being in a unique, different vehicle as a positive, but personally I don't really see this as a plus, because if anything, this just showcases how unbalanced the character roster is. Take a character like Dr. Eggman, for example. I would easily classify him as the absolute worst character in the entire game by a long shot next to the Choo-Choos, I guess. And he's generally not very fun to use because of it. His turning is slow, his acceleration and general speed is slow, his hitbox is gargantuan, making it easy to nail him with items repeatedly, and because of his aforementioned slow speed, he often can't take shortcuts that other vehicles can take with ease, even with speed boosting items, putting him at a massive disadvantage by default. Conversely, look at a character like Shadow, who has basically no downsides to him whatsoever and is bar none one of the best characters in the entire game. Amazing speed, small vehicle frame, great handling, he's literally the whole package. All the system really does is just make a lot of characters either not fun to control or just flat out better than other characters entirely. It ends up being super unbalanced, like I said. In terms of the items, they almost all feel like half-baked Mario Kart reskins. Green projectile that shoots forward and bounces off surfaces, yellow mines that trip up players that drive over them, red projectiles that home in on rivals, basic speed boost, item that messes with opponents' vision. These are all literally just Mario Kart item reskins. And what's worse is that there's not really much flair to them. Let me explain. With Mario Kart, the items were at the very least tied to the game's own universe. You got speed boosts with mushrooms, the projectiles were mostly shells. These items were already in Mario's world, so turning them into weapons already feels much more natural and cohesive. Here you have Sonic shoes for speed boost and the energy shield for, well, a shield, which is fine, I guess. That makes sense. But then you have green boxing gloves, traffic cone mines, rainbows. These are like generic cartoon items. Why not make the items come from various SEGA games? Have the shield be a monkey ball, have the rainbow be a Jet Set Radio graffiti tag, and have it clutter your screen when you drive over it. That would be cool. It's not necessarily a huge detraction or even a needed feature, but it would be pretty nice to have and make everything thematically cohesive for items anyway. The items themselves, as I said before, basically function exactly like the Mario Kart items, but with somehow less impact. Like when you get hit by an item, you briefly spin out, but you go right back to driving as if nothing ever happened, with not much of a speed decrease. It's more of a slight annoyance than anything game-changing. This especially applies to the rainbow item. How they thought this was actually distracting to the player in any way is beyond me. On the plus, I guess it lacks the frustrating element Mario Kart items have, that there's just no punch or effectiveness to any of them at all due to how little of an impact they have on moment-to-moment gameplay. But hey, props to them for implementing a horn item a whole 4 years before Mario Kart did. That's gotta count for something, I suppose. The one exception to the whole the items in this game aren't effective thing is the All-Star move. You get this randomly, usually when you're in dead last or a similar position, and it's basically a unique super move each character has where they get to accelerate rapidly along the track and cause everyone to be squashed in their wake. I do really mean unique too, because each All-Star is different and unique to that specific character, which is pretty cool. Sonic turns into Super Sonic, Beat graffiti tags everyone, Amy smacks people with her hammer, Bonanza Bros get to play like an entire mini-game while their All-Star is active. I think my favorite one though has to go to Amigo. He basically causes racers to form a conga line behind him, and he can just drive on ahead while they're all stuck dancing. I don't know why I enjoy it so much, it's just a funny visual. These are pretty effective items and do help contribute in distinguishing All Stars Racing from any other kart racer, but you rarely ever get to see them if you're so far in the lead since, again, you basically need to be near or at dead last to use them, and only racers in or around those specific positions will feel the impact these All-Star moves present. It's definitely more balanced that way, but that just ends up making the All-Star move little more than a glorified comeback mechanic and nothing else. Alright, now it's time to talk about the racetracks themselves. I personally have a hard time describing what I consider to be truly great kart racing racetracks. Basically just give me fantastic set pieces, good difficulty, whether it be sharp turns or tons of hazards in the way, and variety with a good number of alternate paths and shortcuts to take. They don't all need to be like this, of course. Beginning tracks tend to have easier design than others, but these are the tracks I usually have the most fun with in my opinion. My main issue with All Stars Racing's tracks is that none of them really fill any of these requirements. Thematically, there's a good variety across various SEGA franchises, Sonic obviously getting the spotlight, but you also have tracks from Billy Hatcher, Jet Set Radio, House of the Curian Mansion, Super Monkey Ball, Salmon Day Amigo, you name it. But the main problem I have with these tracks is that, like the game, they're far too basic and kind of boring. A lot of them are flat courses that consist of wide open roads with barely any obstacles at all. People are supposed to run into this? No sharp turns whatsoever, rarely any shortcuts worth anything. There's just nothing much to talk about here. The first Billy Hatcher stage has a grand total of a single incredibly easy shortcut to take, and none of the AI, even if they're set on expert mode, take it for Pete's sakes. The Sonic themed tracks do fare a little bit better in this area from my experience. Like, they're still not great, but they at least offer some interesting set pieces, some obstacles to dodge, and some semblances of shortcuts to take. There's just still not overall much going on here. Just a bunch of easy turning, and that's about it. It makes a lot of these courses just sort of blend together in a pile of Sega-themed mush, and the ones that do stick out don't do it in a very enjoyable way. For example, in the Billy Hatcher Volcano stage, Billy Hatcher stage not being very good, I'm starting to sense a pattern here. There's a section where if you boost on the first ramp, whether by drifting or stunting or an item, you overshoot the second platform and end up crashing and slowing down. So you're basically encouraged to not boost if you don't want to overshoot the ramp and make it? Like, what kind of design is this? Not all of them are bad. I generally consider the Jet Set Radio tracks to be decent, and some of the Monkey Ball tracks aren't too bad, but it really feels like the longer you go on in these tracks, the worse it gets, all culminating into what I consider to be the worst design track in the entire game, Monkey Targets. It starts out kind of okay, if not fairly barren and plain, like, whoa, I drive up a ramp and get a bunch of airtime and I land right on the targets just like the games, this is so rad! But then afterwards you need to climb all the way back up the giant spiral staircase ramp at the end to do it all over again, and this is just awful. It's like the only point in the game where you need to slow down and brake drift, and it just comes off as jarring. It's not even hard to do, I can do it pretty consistently, but it just doesn't feel good to pull off. Certainly not satisfying due to the aptly unsatisfying driving controls, and especially not multiple times in a row for 3 laps. You don't even have anything to look forward to after these sharp turns, just more empty straight shots. This track is a waste. On top of this, during races you can often get a lot of instances of being in the air for a while. Usually these sections are designed for you to pull off stunts, but because of how floaty these vehicles are, doubly so for the hovercraft vehicles, you just end up awkwardly being in the air for too long on multiple occasions. It just kind of breaks flow and again further cements the lack of weight and solid handling these vehicles have. Not really much of a complaint you could argue, but it just doesn't sit right with me, I don't know. Speaking of stunts, I need to go on a bit of a tangent to talk about the stunt system in this game because I do not think they did a good job designing the stunt system at all. So stunts you can perform anytime in the air with a push of a button. This isn't a one stunt only system like Mario Kart either, no, you can chain multiple stunts together by pressing the button multiple times in the air, which, you know, is fine enough. But the issue is that while stunting, your character will begin to perform a random predetermined animation, whether it be a car barrel rolling, jumping out and doing a little trick, or just slightly moving out of your vehicle for a split second. Your ability to end the stunt and perform another one entirely depends on whether or not the animation your character is currently playing ends. To put it in simple terms, the animation that plays when you perform a stunt is completely random, and you need to wait until it finishes to perform another one. And it ends up being random chance if you actually get any boost value off the stunt or not, because again, it's complete luck based. The animation of the stunt that's played could be way too long, and you could land while it's still playing because of it, and as a result, you fail the stunt and get no speed boost value out of sheer dumb luck. Oh, what's that? You want to get a speed boost off this ramp here? Well, I guess that's fine. Just kidding! Whoa! Hope your character pulls out a very quick animation and ends it before you land, otherwise you're screwed. Better luck next ramp! Again, I bring up Shadow being an unbalanced character, and the stunts are another factor as to why. Pretty much all of his stunt animations are extremely brief and quick, allowing you to pull off multiple in quick succession without the risk of landing while an animation is still playing. This character really is the whole package. So, to put it bluntly once more, you can be cheated out of getting a speed boost by doing stunts because you have absolutely no control over whether the random predetermined animation ends, as I said before. But in all honesty, it's not like there's any risk to failing stunts. When you screw up a stunt and land while the animation is still playing, you just continue driving as if nothing else happened. You don't spin out or slow down or anything, you just push onwards like you're resuming a peaceful Sunday afternoon drive. So while the stunt system is screwed over by random luck due to you not having any control over when animation plays and how long it is, you aren't really risking anything by performing stunts, considering there's not really any chance for genuine failure with how you aren't slowed down at all. Thus, this all contributes and combines to form an extremely lackluster, poorly designed stunt system that messes with the game's sense of flow during races in general. And considering the issue I pointed out previously of how you end up in the air for a long time repeatedly, the bad stunt system is something you're going to tend to notice a lot. To focus more on the mechanics a bit, the main gameplay element All Stars Racing focuses on during races is drifting. Like Crash Team Racing before it, mastering drifting is the best way you can get speed and win races, and the game essentially encourages you to drift throughout the entire track at all times. I don't actually really mind the specific focus on drifting, especially because the drift itself feels nice to use, has a nice arc, and holding a drift to charge and gain additional boost levels feels great as well. The problem is that when you do this, the game's challenge just sort of disappears into nothingness. Considering how little of an impact items have and how track design can be really basic at times, and especially considering how it's not exactly that hard to master the game's rigid, simplistic mechanics compared to the other All Stars Racing games, or even other kart racers, constantly drifting and maintaining speed kinda makes this game a bit of a joke difficulty-wise. Even on expert difficulty, I was effortlessly getting first place on every Grand Prix race. I don't think they understood what this word means, call it a hunch. When you complete any race in any mode, whether it be single race or Grand Prix, you earn SEGA miles, basically points you can gain to use as currency. You use these miles in the shop to unlock things such as additional racers, music, and racetracks. Now while this system works, I honestly would have just preferred if we could unlock racers just from playing races, because to get everything you basically need to start grinding races for currency after a while. Alongside the standard single races, the game also has a mission mode, allowing you to complete various objectives with unique scenarios. Like each mission is contextualized with a little story blurb that's actually a detail I can appreciate. I thought I would end up having some degree of fun with this mode, but as soon as I started playing through them one by one, my enthusiasm disappeared faster than my self-esteem disappears whenever I start writing a new script for a video. Each mission has a relatively simple objective, whether it be winning simple races, staying ahead of an opponent for a specific amount of time, collecting items along the track, avoiding objects. There's arguably some good variety to be had, and you get graded based on how many stars you obtain, with the highest rank you can get being a AAA ranking. Now, knowing what I think of the game thus far, only a clinically insane person would push themselves to not only beat all 64 missions offered in mission mode, but to also complete all of them with a AAA rate. What am I doing with my life? So, yeah, I'm a madman and decided to beat all missions in mission mode and obtain the highest possible ranking on all of them. And I can tell you right now, This was a mistake. I don't know, you can definitely make an argument that I was already burned out by the game at this state, so that's why this lingering distaste for the missions strengthened, but these missions are just a whole lot of nothing. I said before there's variety, but considering there's 64 freaking missions, that variety starts to wear thin very quickly and starts to get repeated a lot. There are some missions that are just use the All-Star move to hit these many racers, and in the case with the Bonanza Brothers mission, you basically literally do nothing but mash the A button and win. This game also has boss fights, surprisingly, if you can believe it, and oh my god, are they terrible. I can kinda give brownie points for the idea, but these were just not fun at all. You drive around looking for item capsules, use the item to get a cheap pot shot on the boss, and then drive away and look for another item box, rinse and repeat until the boss dies. Oftentimes, the game gives you items that you can't even shoot at the boss, like the traffic cone mines. When you get these, you can only guess where the boss is going to wander to next in the cramped arena he's in, place one there, and hope and pray the boss is dumb enough to walk into it. Oh right, you also can't even so much as graze the boss, or any other stage hazard either, as one single hit will completely deny a AAA rating. It's not necessarily hard, but it's far too monotonous and luck-based to be anywhere near fun. I'm just glad there's only 2 of them in the entire game. So yeah, while the mission mode is a novel idea, the missions themselves are draining, both with the content they present and with the sheer amount of them you're able to complete. The game also has time trials as expected, where you can race against ghost opponents for the fastest time. Oh yeah, here we go. Gonna burn rubber and do my best to beat these super challenging ghost Oh. That was the dev time I just beat. Oh dear. The main point I'm trying to make here isn't to try and humble brag and flex my epic gamer skills here. My point is to highlight that between the bland items, uninteresting mechanics, awful stunt systems, simplistic barren track design, absence of difficulty, and extremely lackluster single-player only offerings, this game just gets really boring after a while. And again, look, I understand that it was the first in the series, and with that, Sumo Digital clearly wanted to just test the waters and see what worked and what didn't. I get it, I really do. But even with that aside, it's just really hard to go back to this game. If I'm going to play any of the All Stars Racing franchise, it's going to be the other 2 for good reasons, which I'll get into later with this retrospective. Okay, look, I know I just spent a lot of time hardcore dunking on this game, but I want to emphasize that this isn't a terrible game at all, far from it. I don't hate it, I just think it's mediocre, below average in terms of gameplay and design perspectives. But even with these issues I have, I still think the game has a lot of positive aspects going for it. The presentation is colorful and vibrant, though the blank expressionless character models are more than a bit off-putting. The tracks are jam-packed with detail, the roster is extremely varied as I mentioned before, and hey, this might seem like a low bar, but I'm at the very least glad they're incorporating a large variety of all these different SEGA franchises considering how dormant most of them were at that time. They did a great job representing each franchise with the vibrant, detailed racetracks. You can tell there was a lot of care put into this entire game in terms of representation. Admittedly, the Sonic racetracks are far too geared towards Sonic Heroes instead of representing a ton of the other areas in the Sonic franchise, but Sonic Heroes is base, so we'll let it slide. The music is varied, albeit they're just direct rips from the original games with no changes added with the exception of the main menu theme. Wasn't I supposed to be pointing out the positive aspects of this game again? But being able to select which song plays during each track depending on how many you purchase from the shop adds a different fun vibe to these races each time. Bonus points for including a lot of Sonic Rush music. Any inclusion of Sonic Rush music is an instant win for me. I also want to point out the in-game announcers. They constantly provide commentary over races like you would hear during actual professional live races on TV. At least I think so. I don't know. I don't watch NASCAR. I prefer to enjoy life here. Anyway, they're honestly kinda hilarious with the dialogue they provide.
A big hello from Casino Park. We've got a full house of racers ready to risk it all here today. This casino's crammed with tricky turns. Our racers need to ramp up those skills to 11. Well, isn't this a quiet? Wake me up when you guys start driving for real, huh? Come on, guys. Surely one of you wants to win. So into the second lap we go as this race is hot. Choo-choo's looking almost as worried as the rest of the racers with that.
I've seen a lot of people give this game props for the amount of charm, and like, yeah, I can see the charm the game has on full display. But it's just not enough to fully salvage an otherwise mediocre game. At the end of the day, All Stars Racing just ends up being a boring, run-of-the-mill, super basic kart racer with not much room to truly stand out on its own. I know it has fans, but I'm certainly not one of them. I can't see myself revisiting this one anytime soon.